it's weird because we all have different upbringings. Like I said to you before we were recording, my mum's from the Cook Islands, but she thought she was doing me a favour by raising me European. So they took us to the Coromandel, and I got a Palagi dad, and that was what she thought that was going to help me. And I mean, partly it has, because I can, I guess wear that hat in one circle. But I guess it also helped me because I didn't quite see the hierarchical thing in the Pacific that I'm learning now, that it is very hierarchical in terms of who can speak, when they can speak. And so when I started talking to friends who come from more traditional upbringings, it was like, dude, bottling it up is nothing new. We've been doing it since childhood. I had one guest on our new podcast, and he talked about the only time he could kind of speak is when he was translating for his parents at IRD. And it's like the stakes were really high. And it was so high for him, the feeling of being 11, and if you don't get the translation right on the IRD paperwork, we could be on the plane home back to the islands. That left a trauma for him, And I'm like, far out. So everything was kind of used against some of our friends. And no wonder we carry trauma. Because kind of weren't encouraged to speak. We talked about our love for movies. When I was growing up, we would watch, Terminator, or go back even before that, like all the old school 80s films, and laugh and talk and mimic, and, it was always about expression. And I think if you had that upbringing and you were encouraged to talk, you probably maybe don't relate to some of the massive anxieties. But you can quickly imagine friends who maybe that wasn't their story, and maybe add in some of the, the other dodgy stuff that happens in families, that in all families, some of the sexual stuff. But all of a sudden, now that stuff's happening to you. Now you have no way of talking about it. You haven't been encouraged to talk about it. And what came through on the podcast is, where does it go? Well, you bottle it up. And it's like a fizzy can that's getting shaken and shaken. And I think that's what we're talking about, is like it pops. And when it does, man, the outcomes are horrendous.
I know what you're saying there, because I've had guys on the podcast too that's come in and talked about stuff like trauma they've experienced when they were young. And to me, listening to it, I never experienced any of that stuff. And I'm thinking, man, that's bad. But then you hear another person talk about it, another person, and it's like a common kind of thing, when you hear more than 10 people talk about the same kind of things that are going on,
Yeah, absolutely.
in their lives. Now, I'm Samoan, and my parents are both Samoan. They moved over in the 60s, and but my parents too brought me up in the Palagi way, because my mum, they didn't speak Samoan to me or my sisters. It was always English, but they only spoke Samoan to each other, and they wanted us to grow up in the Palagi way because they thought that do well, integrate, do well, and go to school and all that kind of stuff. But the tradition stayed put, like don't answer back to your elders, and that's the main sort of thing for Islander kids. You can't even talk back to anyone older than you.
That's right.
Yeah, so
it's bad. It's bad because the evidence shows that you need to be able to. And
I think it's bad because in the Palagi world, you can talk to people older than you.
Yeah.
It's encouraged, not encouraged, but it's sort of a thing. Like for us, it's like taboo to talk to someone older than you. And when you're working, if you grow up out of the way and you start working and the boss is there and the boss doing something bad, you're not going to speak up because that kind of stuff.
Well, it's going to be registered as you're not engaged, but you're actually being polite.
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to be registered that, why don't you look at me in the eyes? It's because that's a signal that I'm not trying to be alpha. It's an ultimate compliment, isn't it? And smart bosses will know that, but many don't, hey? No. And it'll be like, well, he doesn't look at me in the eyes. He never says anything, just yes, even though I can feel it's a no. And it's like, it's interesting to think if it's like that traditionally in the islands. Hey, if it was as harsh, or if the harshness got bred into us here because of the extra conditions now of the stress, coming in and
because those stresses, living here. But I guess because it's a thing in the islands, it's everybody, it's the norm, right? I guess there's no problem, maybe.
Or maybe you just had
less of a problem over here.
Yeah, and maybe there was more downtimes where
so less stress.
You could de-stress.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't register as a trauma. I don't know about you, but I've got a couple teenagers now, and I'm finding myself wishing that I wasn't around at home so much because there wouldn't be so many arguments. We're arguing because I'm around a lot, but I'm trying to be around a lot.
Yeah.
And it's this weird cycle where my dad wasn't around a lot, so when he was, it was awesome. And I'm just trying to consolidate a balance here, And so I guess what I'm saying is maybe in our more historical versions, let's just say on average the men would go to sea, just as an example of painting a picture. Well, yes, they were out at sea, but it gave everyone a chance to have some time, recalibrate, do something different, and came back and maybe had a chance to miss everyone. Now it's potentially, you can imagine scenarios where the stress is already at 10 and it's going to go to 11, and I think it's not hard to imagine how you can see people getting really into those bad habits, but I guess that's where all the questions are now, is like, what do we do about it? And you're seeing suicide statistics skyrocket, especially for Māori Pacific, and that's, it's going to be Pacific who lead the solutions, because historically there's been no incentive for another culture to fix another culture.
Yeah.